Well, good morning, Jen. How are you?
I am doing fabulous, except it's starting to get cold now. So
Yeah,
I'm a warm weather person, but I like bringing out my sweatpants. So I have to
I
have both of those.
I don't blame. Look, we're having this massive wind and rain thing going on right now here in Massachusetts, so
Uh,
it's not awesome. Yeah, it's not awesome, but it is what it is, right? And
mhm.
but I like sweatpants weather too. I like day pajamas and going
Yes.
into night pajamas.
100%, 100%.
Dr. Jen Fry, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to talk to you. I think this is just going to be an incredibly rich and dynamic conversation. So,
Mhm.
I want to jump right in.
Let's hit
I
it.
want to jump right in. I want to hit it. Yeah. So, you describe yourself as a sports geographer. I don't
Yeah.
even know what that means. It's a title you don't hear every day. Can we unpack that? Can we talk about what that means? What shapes your view of culture, leadership, and sort of what you're doing around human movement?
Yeah. So I think, the thing about it
Mhm.
that many people don't realize is that and I think especially now more so at the undergraduate and graduate level compared to when I did my undergraduate, is that you can really shape your degree program around you.
Mm,
And I see that a lot of students might say, I have this interest, but these are the only programs I can do. And in reality, you can shift it because I'm not sure about you, Richard, but I don't really use my degrees in a way like unless you have very specific degrees, right? Like
correct.
aeroscience and stuff like that. Many of us are not going to use our degrees in the field.
Right.
And for me, I to kind of make a short story longer, like I love to do, I I got my junior college degree, I got my 4-year in psychology, I got my first master's at, Tiffin, Ohio. I was coaching volleyball,
Right.
and a part of it, you have to be a GA and have a degree program, and I grew up my mom did graduate high school. I this whole, like, graduate life, I had no clue of. My mom worked in the library, she's one of the smartest people I knew, but I didn't know about, like, this life of master's, PhD, like, I knew none of it. And
Right.
so I was kind of I graduated college and was like, "I don't know what I'm gonna do," and luckily, I think maybe my junior year, my college coach or my senior year was like, "You should coach these young girls." And I was
Mm.
like, "Okay, I don't really like kids, but I'll do it for money," right? Like, when you're in your 20s, you're like, "Whatever."
You're
And
like, "I need
so
the money."
I need the money, I'll deal with the teenagers, and I really fell in love with using volleyball as a method to help young women. Like, that's what I started to love. And because of that, then it was kind of like, "Well, what do I do?" And then someone mentioned you could be a graduate assistant, and I didn't know what that meant, so I
Even
just
what that meant.
signed
Yep.
up and ended up getting my first master's, and I didn't know that this was even an option. And so
Mm.
then I and this is how also your friends know a lot more about you than you realize. So this I graduated with my first master's in '04, and then I through different jobs and stuff, I ended up living in North Carolina and reconnected with a friend who literally knew me when I was in my early 20s, and this is
Mhm.
now I'm like 35 when
Okay.
we reconnect.
Okay.
And, maybe a year or 2 after that, she was taking this certificate in peace and conflict studies, and she was like, "You would be a really good fit for the program." And I was
Hmm.
like,
How
"Me?
so? How
What?"
so? Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, I don't even know how, but I tend to follow the advice of my friends, so I was like, "Okay, I'll just apply." Like, I didn't think twice about it and was in it and got to right before literally the week before my last semester in it, and I was in a class, and one of my classmates was taking a class. I was like, "That's a really interesting class." She had signed up for the next semester, and I was like, "What is that?" And then she was like, "Oh, it's a part of this whole program." And within 24 hours, a semester before I'm graduate, I changed my whole
Oh my
master
God.
program.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
like, I think the graduate, coordinator was like,
What? You're doing what?
"Ma'am?" Right? "You're doing what? You have, a semester left." And I am a person that I make really big decisions fast, but,
Yeah.
like, if you're like, "Where do you wanna eat?" I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
know."
Yeah.
And
Minutia
so
is not your thing. Yeah. Yep.
minutia is not my thing, and so I decided to change my program, and I'm so glad I did because it fundamentally changed me as a human,
Yeah.
and then I took these different classes with all Black professors, and it was
Mhm.
just it blew my mind, and
Mhm.
so fast forward, I was a person I knew was like, "Hey, you already have 2 masters, you can't get a 3rd, you have to get a PhD."
Right.
And I was like and again, I did not even understand what a PhD was. I mean, and at this point, I worked at Duke, I worked in higher ed for 15 years, but I never thought of a a PhD in relation to me. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't grow up seeing people with PhDs. I didn't see the benefit or the wealth of it. Like, I knew people, right, had them, but one thing I would tell people is that PhDs are all about power.
Mm.
And so at this point, I'm also a professional speaker, so I have my own money. So I'm able to go into it with like a different lens. So someone was like, "Hey, you should look at getting a PhD." And then I'm like, "Well, what do I want to do it in?"
Do with it. Yeah.
And I'm a former college volleyball coach, and I have you probably can't tell, but I have a love of globes and maps.
Oh, yeah, look
I
at that.
have them
Yeah.
like all over
Now
my
now the
house.
geography you've got beautiful African artifacts behind
Yep.
you, right? Yeah,
Thank
so
you. All of
here
that.
here comes the geography.
Right, and but all of these things I actually got before this program even came to mind.
Mm,
Even on my elbow, I have a map tattoo, which I got years before I got into the degree program, right? So,
wow.
part of me, yeah, was already thinking that
You were
way, and
there.
so
Yeah,
I was there,
yeah.
and so
At least
I
subconsciously.
100%, and so
Mhm.
I, was, like, looking at programs, and then she said, "My mom has her bachelor's and master's from in geography from Michigan State, and there's a program there. You should
Go
look at
green.
it." And I was, "Go white! Yes, yes." And so I was like, "Okay, let me look at this program." I talked to people, and so one of the things I'll tell folks is that when you have money, you have power,
Right.
and in the P like I said, the PhD is all about power, and I was deathly afraid because I had heard these experiences from my friends of people of their chairs not allowing them to graduate because they were the only people who know how to do their research, right?
Right.
Like, I met a
Yep.
woman at Duke
Yep.
who was, like, in her 7th or 8th year because
Yep.
she was the only person who knew how to do it, and her chair would not let her graduate.
Right.
You hear
Yeah, I've
just
seen that.
horror stories of
Mhm.
PhD students who have something they come in wanting to research, and their chair is like, "No, you have to do this because it's under
Mhm.
my research." And
Mhm.
so, when you come in with your own money, there's power, and so I said, "I know I wanna research Black women who are former volleyball players, and I want to research, like, their professional experience. Who's gonna pay me?"
Mhm.
And so, the thing about it is that at the PhD program, you're kind of making up your own programs, right? Like,
Yeah.
people are like, "I am a philosopher who studies the sex life of 17th century banana slugs," right? Like, the stuff that people do, you get to decide it, and so I wanted to combine this love I have of maps and geography and people and really understanding the experiences of Black women who played professionally and to
Mhm.
give almost a cheat code to people in the future, young Black women who wanna play overseas of here are things you need to know.
Yeah.
Here's thing because a lot of times, if you see them online, it's very romanticized,
Sure.
but once they go there, they see that if they don't know the language of the contract, how it could be dangerous. How there was one woman who said she hurt her knee and a doctor looked at it and said she was fine, and then, like, at midnight, she gets a call, anonymous call, and someone's like, "That was a dentist, that wasn't a doctor, you need to go get a second
Wow.
a second view." So, like, I want people to know that these are the ways that you protect yourself if you're gonna play
Yeah.
overseas, and
Right.
you're thousands of miles away from people, and so that's
Right.
kind of how I came up with it. It was this combination of the things I love and to be one of the first people to study it.
Well, what I saw this refrain from you was this sort of like you have this amazing way that you think about both people, places, and power. You've mentioned power
Yeah.
so many times, Jen, and I think that's exciting. And you've built this whole career now around,
Yeah.
I think, those three elements, and
Yeah.
especially around how to have and explore tough conversations. And I think
Yep.
you had, sounds like during the course of your GA work, your PhD work, you had a lot of tough conversations.
Yeah.
Where's that moment for you where you realize that conflict isn't something that we should avoid as humans, but it's something that we should lean into?
Oh, man, I probably about maybe about 3 years ago,
Mhm.
because if you think about it, we're not we're not really taught anything about conflict,
Right. Usually we're
and
taught to avoid it. Yeah.
100%, and
Yeah.
so I say 3 years ago because even though I went through a year and a half of peace and conflict studies, when I sit back and reflect, you're taught about it in a very theoretical mind frame.
Mhm.
You're not taught about it in relation to you as the center.
Interesting.
You're taught about it as, like, the world is kind of the center and you're a piece of it.
Mm.
And so when you don't center yourself in this, you don't, like, fundamentally understand how it affects you, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Okay. Yep.
Because when you think of yourself as just a Lego in a whole bunch of Legos, you don't really see the importance of what you do versus you see yourself as, like, the masterpiece of Legos.
Mm.
And so for me, when I took these classes, yes, I looked at it as a very theoretical, but not like, how am I affected? How does it affect my relationships? How does it affect how I view the world? How does
Mhm.
it affect me in all of these ways? And so it was probably like 3, maybe even 4 years ago where I started to pay more attention in my sessions about where, like, the stuff I talk to and, um, like, should I lean in more on
Mhm.
it? Are people, like, sitting with it?
Mhm.
Are they, like, "No, afraid?" And so I really was kind of sitting there, like, paying attention to it, and then from that point, it was like, okay, I especially going on with, like, DEI and everything within society, was like, maybe this is
Mm.
something I have.
Right.
And I started to explore it more and more and more, and I was like, yeah, this is something because we can't do really hard work without a foundation of conflict. If
Mm.
I'm asking you to talk to your parents and grandparents about hard things that could potentially splinter your relationship, you have got to have an understanding of how conflict
Conflict
affects you.
works. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so that's how I started to do it, and the one thing I will say is when you do this type of work, it fundamentally changes you as a human,
Mm.
and it changes your relationships, and it changes you in ways that I didn't realize it would change me.
Hmm. What I've seen, and I appreciate what you just said too about how you're sitting with it, like, and the analogy of the Lego and the masterpiece of Legos, I think was really spot on, Jen. What I've seen in my career is organizations misunderstand conflict, and you kind of just alluded to that,
100%.
right? They misunderstand what it is. I've worked with CEOs who react to conflict very vigorously or sometimes very they lash out, right? They don't know how to reframe it in the middle of the tension that's going on. I think a lot of what you do with Gen Fry Talks is figure out how people can avoid those conversations, but really thrive in those conversations,
Mhm.
conversely. Talk to me a little bit about what Gen Fry Talks does.
So, I just wanna hit on what you're talking about with leaders. The
Sure.
one of the reasons why I do this also is because if you don't understand personally who you are in conflict, it's gonna bleed into how you are professionally.
Mhm.
So if the only way you've learned to deal with conflict is to lash out, and that's the
Mm,
only way, you literally don't have a healthy way of dealing with conflict. You don't
right.
even know what that looks like. So if you have my boss, Richard, if you like to yell and scream, and HR is like, "Richard, you can't yell and scream," you really don't know, like, a different way to navigate
Right.
conflict because that's all you've learned and
All you know.
seen.
Mhm.
And so that's one of the problems is that these leaders don't, and they also see, like, the Jerry Maguire people who are, like, screaming and yelling and making the money. So now the connection is I can yell and scream as long as I'm producing
Being
or making
productive, right,
money,
exactly, yep.
right?
Hitting my
And so
goals, yep.
yep, and that's it. Like, I can treat people however I want as long as I'm doing these things, and they don't know that there's a different way to do it because all
Mm,
they did was they were raised professionally in fear, and
yep.
that's what they saw, and that's what they dealt with.
Mhm.
And so really having to, so this kind of goes back to your question about Gen Fry Talks. It's really getting people to understand the nuts and bolts of who they are and why
Yeah,
they're reacting in these certain ways.
yeah,
Because then if you know the nuts and bolts of why you react in certain ways, you're more likely then to do some shifting of it versus
right.
me being like, okay, Richard, you're aggressive. And you're being like, okay, I know.
Mm,
Versus Richard, you're aggressive because you worked for bosses that would cuss you out all the time.
right,
And anytime their name showed up on your phone, you literally freaked out and were
yep.
sweating and were like, "Oh my gosh, what happened?"
What's happening
And
now? Yep.
that's what you're used to, and so
Mm,
now that's the only way you know how to work with the folks. You don't know how to explain to someone you're hurt, angry, pissed off, frustrated without it being screaming.
mm,
And that's the thing that we do is we help people get to the nuts and bolts and then help them work to say, what does a culture where
mm,
where we navigate conflict, where we talk about, where we thrive in it, where it allows us to innovate and grow and
yep.
hold people accountable. But people, you can't get to that side of stuff unless
Mm,
you're willing to think about how you grapple with hard things as a culture and as an institution. And many people don't want to do that because then it means that they have to hold themselves accountable
Incredible.
for hurt and harm in ways that maybe they have never been taught
They've never
or have a
sat with or
willingness to do. Yep,
right, yeah, absolutely.
exactly.
Having been someone who's had, male bosses, coincidentally, who, have been the pound on the table, scream in your face, make you sweat when the phone rings, I completely empathize with what you're saying about this, culture and power dynamics and how they show up in workplace
Mhm.
conflict, and, we talk about, like, "Oh, we have to have this culture of experimentation where we're always experimenting, we're always trying new things." Well, guess what? That often leads to conflict when the experiments don't,
Yes.
come out the way that you think that, and then how do you deal with that? You abandon it in most cases,
Mhm.
right? And that's
Mhm.
not healthy or effective either, right? So,
Well,
yeah.
to hit on that, I think the thing is that when you innovate, you're gonna screw up a lot. Like,
As you
that's just
yeah,
you should. If I'm trying to build something, I am trying to innovate and figure it out and tinker with it, and I got test stuff, and it's gonna be wrong, this will be right, and the problem is that when people don't know how to handle mistakes,
mhm,
then all they have is anger. And, the one thing I tell people is that you have to think about, like, on a scale of 1 through 10, what's your mistake spectrum? What is a 10 for you? Where you're
mhm,
like, "I'm probably gonna have to let you go," or "You're gonna
right,
have to be severely punished,"
right.
versus a 1 is, "I don't even know if you tell me you made the mistake." Like, a 4 might be, you make the mistake, you fix it, and you tell me afterward.
Right,
8 might be, you made a big mistake and I have to be brought in to fix it. And
right,
so to know where you are on your spectrum, because then you kind of can understand that some things just aren't a big deal. Some
yeah,
mistakes are not a big deal. Like, one time someone on my team sent out the email, subject line had like a misspelled word.
yeah.
And then a second later, she resent out a new email saying, "I'm sorry for the misspelling," and I was like, I'm gonna be honest, most people probably didn't notice
Didn't even
the first
notice. Right,
misspelling. No.
yeah.
And to me, like, if you had been like, "Should I send it out again?" I'd be like, "Nah, it's not worth the time."
Done with it. Yeah,
Because
yeah,
most people, now, guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna go back to the original email
and
and
see
look
it.
at the misspelling. Yeah, right? Like, there have been times where people have maybe sent something negative, problematic in
Mm,
the email, and most likely people haven't sent it, but
right,
then they maybe will say something to try and cover it up, and then people go back and they're like, "Oh, this is what they sent."
right.
And so the thing about it is, like, you as a leader have to figure out, like, what's your spectrum?
I
Everything
get that.
can't be you're pissed off and
A
livid.
10. Yeah,
No, everything can't
yeah,
be that. You gotta be
yeah,
able to, if you want people to innovate, especially in tech, if you want people to move fast, you have to acknowledge that errors are gonna come with it.
yeah.
That's just
It's
the way it
interesting.
is.
I have something that I carried with me my whole career where I made a mistake, a pretty big one, and went to my senior vice president and said, "I made this mistake," and she was, like, horrified, right? Horrified that I made this mistake, and I said, "Well, do we li isn't this a workplace culture where we're allowed to make mistakes and learn from our mistakes,
Mm.
and I won't make it again?" And she was like, "No." I was like, "What do you mean, no? Like, no one's perfect. How do we live in a culture where everything is perfect all the time?" And but I realized, to your point, our CEO, was a smash on the table, pound,
Mm.
yell in your face kind of person. So she was in constant fear of mistakes.
Mm.
And that just,
Mhm.
to your point, came down to me, which then went down to my people, which then went down
Yeah.
to their people. And it just continued that vicious cycle all the way down of, no, this isn't a culture where mistakes are allowed, so don't make them. And now you're fearful every minute that you're going to
Yep.
make a mistake, right? So
Yep.
I want to talk about no. When I
Mhm.
asked her, "Are we allowed to make mistakes?" and she said, "No, we're not." But I want to talk about I said no. Your
Yeah.
book. I said no. It's a rally. I think it's a rally cry. It's a rally cry
Mhm.
for people who have ever felt guilty about setting a boundary in their
Mhm.
professional life, in their personal life, in their professional life.
Yep.
What made you sit down and write the book, Jen?
It's really funny because I'm writing my dissertation, and literally people are like, "When are you gonna write your book? When are you gonna write your book?" And I'm
You're
like,
like,
"I got this 400-page dissertation I'm writing right
right,
now.
right, yeah,
What are you talking about?" And this goes back to what you're saying in
yeah,
the sense of I never even thought that I would be writing a book like that. And my mom worked in the library for 14 years. So I have
yeah.
shelves and
The books,
piles of books like I am the person that's like, you always need another book. So I
yeah,
have piles, and then on my Kindle, I have books a million. Like, I have so many books. And so I've always loved them, but the thought of me writing a book
Writing?
has
Sitting down and writing one?
never
It's very
yeah,
intimidating. Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I think that helped me was that people it's like this idea of, like, you have something that the world wants to hear.
Mhm.
So, kind of having that idea, I was like, "Okay." And so then what I did, which I think is kind of different, is that a lot of when you hear about people's, like, writing process, it's like,
Mhm.
grab the candle and light it, set the
Yeah.
music,
Right,
have the
right.
correct light
Set
right?
your
Like
timer for 15 minutes and write for
yeah.
15 minutes and then yeah.
I don't have time. I don't have time to do that. I don't. So what I would do is when I'm driving, I would literally on my phone do voice to text.
Yep, perfect. Yep.
And so that's how I wrote my chapters. And so I had this goal of by December 24 of having the first draft. And
Mhm.
I don't know what I'm gonna do after, but I was like, I'm gonna have this draft. And so for me, it was kind of like this idea of I I am a speaker that's very skill based. I don't really say I'm like a motivational. I say like I'm here to give you skills. That's
Mm,
my goal.
I
I
like
want
that.
you to leave with notes of saying, "Here are some things I can implement immediately."
Right, right.
Because you can hear a motivational person, but you might not know, like, "What do I do with this? You just
Mhm,
motivated me, now what?" And
mhm,
so, I want the now what to be that you have skills. And so that's kind of what it was, and so the
mm.
process for me is I'm a very patient, but also I'm a very impatiently patient person, so I started talking to people about like, you always hear about traditional publishers and all that, and when I'm
Yeah.
hearing it takes years to do that, I'm like, "Oh,
That
no.
can work.
This
No years.
this book is gonna be published really quick, like." And so I learned just, like, how to do self-publishing and the things I would do again, and I'm actually in the middle, random enough, of writing books 2 and 3, which,
Awesome.
like, now it's going but realizing, like, okay, this self-publishing route, if I wanna get it out when I want, this is a route for
That's the
me,
way to go.
a
Yep.
and I have more control over the cover, right? I have how it looks, how
Mhm,
it feels, like, I have more control versus traditional, which is gonna be like, "No, no, 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 no." I have
mhm.
more control, and so that was kind of really important to me, and, like, it was a really cool experience, and I my chief of staff always laughs at me and because when I tell her, like, my the PhD wasn't that difficult. Like, it was hard, but for me, I did my PhD in 3 years. I did a 403-page dissertation.
Mhm,
I did a brand new theoretical framework for Black female
mhm.
athletes. And I say it wasn't that hard because I had a chair who loved the shit out of me, and that's a
Yeah,
difference maker.
that makes
So
a difference.
anyone
Yep.
here who is going for a master's or a PhD, please don't go for the big name. Don't
Mm,
go for the big sexy name. Go for the chair that loves the hell out of you, that
right.
will
It's gonna
wanna
be there for you. Yep.
gonna be there for you, will fight for you, will feed you, will
Mhm.
send you jobs, will do all like, go for that person who has time for you, because when you go for the big sexy name, baby, they don't have time,
Right.
and because my chair had time, I was able to get through it faster. I know
Mhm.
people, that also are waiting months to get back edits for a chapter. And they might have another year added because they're waiting on their chair, and I did not have to do that at all, and so
That's perfect.
that made it so much easier, and then also, my philosophy for my PhD was B's get PhDs. Like, I'm not sitting here trying to be
Bees get
baby and
degrees, bees get
B's get
PhDs.
PhDs. Like, I'm not sitting here trying to get an A in every no, baby, what do I need to graduate? And then that also allowed me to push on professors more than I
Mhm.
think other people would be comfortable because I don't care about the A. Like, okay,
Right,
don't give me the A, but I know you're gonna give me this B. I know that
right.
for a fact.
And I know that I'm gonna graduate.
I know I'm a graduate. I'm not like I'm and so like I said, when you have money, you have power. And so
Right.
there were things that people would not do. Like
Mm.
the way my dissertation is
Yeah.
the chapters are done is that I wanted the definitions at the very beginning before you even started going into the chapters because
Mhm,
I want you to know how I define words. And
mhm.
when it got time to like through the graduate program to publish, they're like, you can't have based on blah blah blah. It has to go at the end. I was like, well, it's not. And if we gotta go up the food chain, we gonna go
We
up
gotta
the
do
food
it.
chain. But again, Richard, y'all talk about innovation. Y'all say we are higher ed, we are innovative. But I gotta follow how you write my own dissertation? I thought we were innovative and changing the landscape and doing new frontiers, but I gotta do my dissertation the way you are telling
You
me?
want right. That doesn't work. Yeah.
No. Who do I gotta talk to? 'Cause this
No,
this de this definitions is gonna be at the front, I'm telling you that. It's
well, no wonder you self-published. I said no because this is, this is just a downstream effect of your PhD dissertation, isn't it? Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
literally,
Yeah, yeah. I
literally.
love it.
And so that's one thing I wanna tell people. If you're listening, if you're going into programs, like, you have more power. And a lot of times, like, the graduate program and stuff is weaponized against you to maybe keep you silent.
Mm,
Y'all go and talk to those people. Go and
yeah,
talk like, I was like, when the woman was like, "Well, we have to do it this way," I'll go put on ProQuest myself, but you're
right.
not changing my dissertation, and I fought for that with no problem, and she was like, "Well, how about we make it chapter 1?" Cool,
Okay,
but it's not
that's a
moving.
compromise. Right.
I'll compromise with that, and so I want people to understand, like, you have more power, and if it's something that you believe in and it's important to you, figure out ways to fight for it.
Got it. I like it. I like it a lot. Um, let's talk more about innovation. Uh,
Mhm.
you're doing this other thing too. You're doing this other thing called Florida.
Richard, I
Your
let
other
me
thing.
tell you,
Tell me
whenever
about.
you Imma tell you, but here's the thing, is that the problem with getting a PhD is that you do this hard thing forever, and
Yeah,
then you stop, and you need something to fill the void.
you need to fill
And
the
then
void.
that
I get it.
and then we see people going to law school, which I thought about, and my friends were like, "Don't you dare." So
Don't
then
do
I
it.
was like, "Imma start a tech company." I don't
Yeah,
understand myself. And so I am a non-technical founder, which means I don't code, I don't do any of that
of a
stuff.
tech company. Yep.
Of a tech
Yep.
company. I'm a sport geographer of a tech company.
Right.
And I just felt that there was a problem to solve, and I thought that when people travel in groups, it's just way too chaotic.
Hmm.
People don't know what's going on, it breaks up relationships, and it really started with I was a coach for 15 years, like I said, and we did a tremendous amount of group travel, and we were doing it by
Hmm.
paper and emailing,
Hmm.
and then I just said there has to be a better way, and then my
Right.
PhD graduation was really where I was like, "This is we have
This is
to
the way
find
to do
something
it.
better."
Yeah.
And so that's how I started this tech company, and it has been I will say, running a tech company is far harder than a PhD in ways I would have
Yeah.
never imagined.
I'm with you. Well, I mean, look, building a tech company from the ground up is one of the hardest things that anyone can do,
Yes.
whether you're a technical founder or a non-technical founder. And I think it's probably given you more. I don't want to speak for you, but given you more than speaking or consulting ever could,
Oh,
as
yes,
it pertains
yes.
to humility, as it
Yeah,
pertains to
what,
leadership.
Richard? As humility as leave your ego to the side. The amount of no's you're gonna hear, baby. Yes, it has been I have a PhD in humility from running
Yeah,
this tech company.
I
Imma
bet you
tell you
do.
that.
I bet you do. So what are the parallels between, managing conflict and coordinating logistics for athletes on the move?
I think that a few of the parallels is that you have to figure out, like, what's the big problem?
Mhm,
And many times in conflict, people aren't thinking about what's the big problem.
mhm,
And there'll be times where I'm in conflict with someone, and I'll literally say, "What is it you want? Like, tell
mhm.
me what it is you want in this situation." And many
Right.
times people, they're just angry and they want you to know they're angry, but they really don't know what they want. I'll ask them,
Mm,
like, "What is your solution you want from this?" And they don't
mhm,
have it.
mhm,
And so I see that the parallel is that when we're talking about group travel, sometimes, especially I've learned, is that you have to really figure out what is the problem you're solving. Like,
mm,
really, really, what is it?
mhm.
And you cannot be tied to your solution. You have to be tied to the problem.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Because so many people are tied to the solution. And when you're tied to the solution, you might be what's the old saying? You're creating a solution for something that's not a problem.
Correct, correct, absolutely. We tell that to our entrepreneurial students here all the time, like, you need to love your problem, live your
Yes.
problem, be tied to your problem.
Yes.
Vague problems lead to vague solutions,
Yes.
right? And that's the
Yes.
real challenge. Yeah,
Oh
absolutely
my
right.
gosh, that I love that, and the thing is that also it's interesting the amount of people who don't do research on their thing.
Mhm,
Like, ho are you like, how big of a problem is this, and are you sure there's no other solutions? I have a
mhm,
lot of people who will come and talk to me about wanting to be a professional speaker.
right,
And I'll say, "Okay, well, what do you wanna talk about?" And this is kind of the same thing, like, there's a connection between being a professional speaker and building tech. And so when people come to me and I'll be like, "Okay, well, what do you wanna talk about?" They'll be like, "I wanna talk about leadership." I'm like, "Baby, you and 8 million other people.
right,
You and 8 people,
right. I wanna
8 million other
talk about
people."
building your brand.
Right? Like, literal. Richard, people have come up and I'm like, what does that even mean? Who do you want help? How do you want to help them? And so the same, again, like you said, people will have a vague problem and a vague solution. And I'll be like, you can't be the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
You have like this one guy, and also I hate when people are like, "Let me just pick your brain on this thing." I'm like, "No, you can't." But this one guy heard me talk about these things, and then immediately he's like, "I want to talk to you about this." I'm like, "Well, what are you trying to like do?" And he sent me
Right.
this list of like 50 things. I'm like, "Baby, you're not gonna be able to do that. Like, you're
Right.
trying to be the kitchen sink. Pick one
Pick one thing.
utensil,
Mhm.
one
Right.
utensil, and
Whisk.
that
Give me a whisk.
give me a big whisk, small whisk, but give me a whisk, because then when you have one thing you can focus on, you
Yep.
can see the ripple effects. Did I just
Mhm.
need to only build a whisk, or do I
Mhm.
need the whisk and the tongs and the spatula? But
Mhm.
you have to know one small thing, and that's with speaking. I sit at the intersection of conflict and culture. I am niched
Mhm.
down. I can connect it to leadership, I can connect it to all these other things, but this is my starting ground. And
Right.
when people have like this, and I think as a non-tech founder, I was like, "I'm doing the world." And I was like, "I cannot. I don't have enough money or time. Let me focus on this." And so that's about the humility is you have to be so tied to your problem. And
Mhm.
like I said, small things, I will sit here and be like this. Big things of pivoting, I do it quickly.
You're on
And
it.
that's the thing also when you have tech business, you have to be willing to pivot. The
Mhm.
the mantra "pivot or die" is
Mhm. It's so true.
1000% true.
100%.
1000% true.
Yeah. 1,000%. Yeah.
You could be tied to your idea and that idea will die with you. Y'all will
Right.
be in the coffin together.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen.
But, like, I pivoted with my professional speaking, I started to see the landscape, I was like, "Let me move it."
Yep.
Same thing with my platform of, like, the central ethos of the problem we're solving is still
Solving. Yep.
just knowing there might be different ways.
Nice. Where are we going from here? What's next?
Oh, man, in what aspect? I'm writing 2 other books.
I
I
know. You
think
already said that. It's crazy.
when it comes to the platform is that we are just really paying attention to what customers want, and we're doing
Mhm.
some really cool pilots to
Mhm.
see how the events, the participants, and our platform all work together.
Oh, it
And
all
that's
gets together.
another
Yep.
thing is that you have to be like it's gonna be ugly when people start using it. And that I
Mhm.
think was something I didn't realize because
Right.
when someone asks about a bug, I'd be like,
And you're
"Oh
gonna
my
be okay with
god."
that. You're gonna be okay. Yeah. How do we have a bug in the software? It can't be. Yep.
Yep, you have to realize think about how many times you download the updates on your phone or computer and then there's bugs and they just fix it. And
Fix it.
so for us, it's really because this is new technology of how, like I said, participants, events, and our platform all work together and using these pilots to gain that information to be like,
Mm.
okay, this is what we need to tinker with, but you need people on it to see how they react because
Right.
yes, you can have everything in theory, but you need to see it in actual practice.
I have this concept of the no regret investment, whether it's product development, whether
Mm.
it's experimentation, whether it's innovation, right? You have to find those no regret investments and you have to make them because
Mhm.
they're good for you at any point down the line. They're going to be good. You might not see it now. They're going to be good.
Yes.
You have this no regret revolution that you're doing.
Mm.
Tell
I'm
me
gonna
about
write
that.
that down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
write Richard, that's a good one. No
That's what I feel.
regret
Revolution.
revolution.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. And then before we wrap, let's talk about everybody find you. How do we get to JenFryTalks? Let's plug, plug, plug.
Okay, I appreciate that. I like this
Yeah.
no regret revolution.
Yeah.
I think the thing is that for me, because some people, they'll kind of ask this question of like, what would you change in your life?
Right.
And I always say there's nothing. There's
Hmm.
0 I would change because
Hmm.
everything has led me to where I'm supposed to be. If I regret going to Washington State and us
Hmm.
as a staff getting fired from it,
Hmm.
then that means that I don't get the very next year to coach for a national championship. If I regret this one hard moment, I lose out on the moment of a lifetime. And so that's why if you can't regret the ugly and think the beautiful will still be there.
Oh, I love that.
And
I
that's what
love
some
that.
people do is they'll try and be like, "I regret these really hard moments." Well, the
Mhm.
hard moments really grow you, and then they create these beautiful moments. And so if I was like, I regret, for instance, I got fired one day before my 90 days was up at Elon in my DEI job. One day.
Wow.
If I regretted getting fired, I wouldn't have started my companies. I wouldn't have
Right.
got my PhD. So if I regret the hard, I would have missed out on all of this, and that's
Mm,
why I don't regret any of that. So anything I do, like you said, I like the idea of a no regret revolution. Like, I'm not regretting anything I do
anything.
because it's the path it's leading me to. Even if it was hard and ugly and painful, if I regret it, I'm gonna miss out on everything else. And you cannot have a life of beauty without hard moments. You just
Oh,
can't.
look at that. You just made another amazing catchphrase. I love that. I love it. I love it. Let's
Yes.
find you. How do we find you?
Everything JenFryTalks. So if you Google JenFryTalks on any social media platform, anywhere, you will find me at JenFryTalks. I made it really simple.
I love it. So
Everything.
simple.
Yep. If you want my book, you can go on Barnes& and Noble, Amazon. We
I
have
said
it
no.
in the yep, I Said No. You can find it in PDF and or excuse me, EPUB and paperback. If you want a signed copy with my Herbie Hancock, go on my website, JenFryTalks, under Jen's book. You can buy it, and I will send it to you. And just to let you know, if you buy the Herbie Hancock version, you also get stickers and
Oh,
bookmarks.
I love this. I like this.
Just
I like this
saying.
a lot. I like this a
So
lot. And
and
Herbie Hancock's one of my favorite artists. So this is
Mm.
great.
There we go, and then if you want any information about Corridor, where we sit in the intersection of group travel and sports tourism, COORDLE, also
Mhm.
anywhere, you could take a look, find me, let's chat how we can help your life be easier with moving groups of people.
I love it. Jen, thanks for spending time with me. I really appreciate it. I learned so much about Cordal, about Jen Fry Talks, about I Said No. Love it all. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you, Richard, for having me. This has been a wonderful start to the day.